For a soldier who has returned from war, life is never going to be the same again. Imagine you are over in Afghanistan in the dirt, the dust and the sweat with your weapon at the ready, expecting to come under fire at any given time or be blown up by a bomb. Then, in a matter of 10 days or less sometimes, you hop on a plane and you're back home with your family and your friends within your community and expected to be back to normal. Can you imagine? One of the things I remember from when my partner came back from Afghanistan is he had difficulty throwing little batteries into the bin because over in Afghan they could be stolen and used in explosive devices. The other thing they have to remember when they come back home is they have to remember that they're safe here, that strangers aren't enemies, that bumps in the roads aren't bombs. It's just a different world. I'm here today to give a voice to the families and soldiers who are fighting a silent battle back home, and they're fighting it every day. This battle is claiming casualties, and it also kills. I'm here today to talk about post-traumatic stress disorder, mental health, and its effects on our soldiers and their families. I personally prefer it to be called post-traumatic stress injury because it is an injury. It's an injury to the mind of a person that has experienced horrific trauma. And injuries can heal. I also know that other people are advocating for this term also. The difference between post-traumatic stress-related injuries and a physical injury is physical injuries can be seen. You can see a soldier who has had their leg blown off by a bomb, who has had their face scarred by burns and explosives, or scars from being shot and bullet wounds. You cannot see someone who has a mental illness or an injury to their mind. You see these soldiers who are tall, strong and brave, but you really don't know what's going on inside. Post-traumatic stress-related injuries also affect the families as well. So it doesn't just get that soldier, it affects every other relationship within that soldier's world. And I have seen this personally time and time again. Since the year 2000, 42 Australian soldiers have been killed in action at war. 13 veterans and 98 soldiers have killed themselves. They've completed the act of suicide. Sadly, there's actually reports that state this could be up to 7 times more. So we're looking at about 700 people. And on any given night here in Australia, we have up to 3,000 veterans homeless and living on our streets because of mental health-related illnesses and difficulties. Please remember that these are people that chose to fight for our country. And we have more soldiers killing themselves than those who have been killed in action. It's just unthinkable. I'm here today to also share with you the experience, or personal experience, of being a partner to an Australian infantry soldier and of being a mental health clinician. Being a mental health clinician, it's given me great insight to how mental illness and injuries affect not just the individual, but the entire family circle. And I've also seen what those people go through, and I've seen that they can recover, and I've seen that they can heal. For me, within 14 months of my then partner returning from Afghanistan, our relationship broke down. It was completely gone, and it never came back. But what I also found, as this was happening to many of the friends and other families that I knew that were in the military. And from this, I started talking about it and I began to wonder. And the more I looked at it and the more I talked about it, the more I found I was talking to people that all over the place that had experienced or had known someone that had been affected by post-traumatic stress-related injuries. And from this, I began to wonder. I wondered what was actually happening to our soldiers, what was happening to those families when their love, their father, their mother, their sister or daughter came home from war. We've been warned by war veterans of a tidal wave of soldiers who are going to be developing post-traumatic stress-related injuries. We've seen this from our Vietnam vets and also all those soldiers that returned from other world wars and being labelled as shell shock. I personally believe that people don't die from suicide. They die from a mental illness. Happy people don't kill themselves. It's really that simple. The other thing that I would like to stress and for everyone to remember is that every person that's gone to war has their own experiences of what happened. And when they come back, it's a very individual path and an individual journey on how that person and that family then process the trauma and the things that have happened to them. So not all soldiers, all families will be affected by post-traumatic stress-related injuries. But the soldiers that are, they come home, and that's when the insomnia and the nightmares begin. For a soldier who comes home from war and develops post-traumatic stress-related injuries, that's when the hard times happen. That's when they get nightmares, and they're often twisted versions of their past when they see their sisters being blown up, their friends being shot, and explosions going everywhere, and they can't do anything about it. And these dreams happen over and over again. They feel an immense guilt because they're still alive when their friends died, and they can't explain it. That's called survivor's guilt. They isolate themselves from their friends and their family because no one understands them anymore, and they've lost that connection. They've lost interest in what they do. They've lost and passion for what they used to love. And often they just become distant and different. Some soldiers, they then start to become reckless and they push those boundaries and they never know when to stop. And then some soldiers will just drink in hope that it all goes away. People call it anxiety, people call it depression, people call it PTSD. But for these soldiers and these families, it's now what they know as their life. I personally believe that we as a country have to get behind these people and get behind these families and show them and give them some support, give them a voice, give them hope. Sadly, within 14 months of my partner returning from Afghanistan, 2 of his fellow soldiers completed suicide. That saddened him, but also terrified me. It terrified me of what could actually happen to this person that I knew. For families and for me, when their partners are deployed to war, it's a different experience. Really, you don't really know what's going on at all. You're kept in the dark, because war's all secret stuff. The only things I found out about what was going on was through the news, what you see in media, or even Facebook, of all things. And when he was deployed for Afghanistan, it was probably the hardest 8 months of my life. So much so that my own mental health suffered. But luckily, I had a supportive family, I had great friends, and I had the insight to know to get help, to seek the support that got me through it. That year for me was my graduation year from uni. It was probably meant to be one of the best times of my life. But really, on graduation day, all I was asking for, all I was hoping for Christmas, for my birthdays, I was just wanting this person that I loved to come home alive. The other thing that you go through as well is for me personally, I went through months at a time not hearing from him at all because he was always out patrolling. And then you get a phone call out of the blue at any given time of day. You really couldn't know. It was like being on call 24/7. I used to have my phone in the shower with me just in case. And then when he was on the phone, he couldn't tell me about anything anyway. So it didn't make for a good phone call, I guess. I used to blabber on about everything I'd been doing. He'd just tell me he'd been up to soldier stuff. It was hot and it was dusty. But then when I hung up that phone, it used to terrify me that could be the last time that I ever spoke to him again. Particularly when a few days before, some of his fellow soldiers had come under fire, had been shot, and they'd been wounded, and some had been killed. And when that happened, I used to sit on that couch, frozen, knowing and clinging to the fact that I hadn't had a phone call to say it was him. That's all I had to cling to, was if you hadn't been told he was dead, it wasn't him. But then I would cry every time because it was still one of our own. It was still a soldier who had a family, and it was still a soldier who was going to be loved and missed. And my heart broke every single time that happened. And it still breaks now when we lose our soldiers overseas, every time. Sorry. We lost 10 soldiers that tour, 10 Australian soldiers. It's 10 families that lost somebody that are now having to deal with the repercussions of that. For families, they go, like I said before, they go through their own experiences of war with their partner deployed, and they have their own ways of managing that. And when that person comes back from Afghanistan, they have to then manage what it's like to have a soldier that's coming through that come down period, which is expected. It's really normal for that to happen. They're at this heightened state where the fight and flight's ready to go, and then they've got to come back and be normal. So there's, it takes time. But that can be stressful in itself. It's stressful because you're consistently walking around on eggshells, because at any given time, if you dropped something or you sneezed too loudly, they'd flinch and they'd get angry. And you didn't really understand why. The kids get upset because they don't know what's happened to a dad. They don't know what's happened to their dad that used to go outside and play football with them. He's gone. This person that they loved dearly, that they knew so well, will just sit in a corner or in front of the TV and do nothing with them. And you as a partner, me, myself, I used to reach out as much as I could, but I didn't understand why I couldn't help them and I couldn't connect with them anymore. And in my role position, that person that I had that got us through for 3.5 military years, that connection was gone and it never came back. And for those children and those loved ones and families that are going through this person's distant and they're different. And you're always trying to understand what happened to this caring soul that you once loved, or you still love in a way. And for some families, this beautiful, caring, gentle man has come back and is now an angry and violent stranger. For me, when he came back, everything I knew had changed. And like I said, I expected there to be adjustment periods, but I was told that was normal and that's okay. But the love and the connection that we had was gone. That deep and emotional bond that got us through for so long, it was just disappeared. He didn't share my dreams. Even his sense of humour had changed. And I didn't understand what that was all about. So I guess what I'm trying to show you is that post-traumatic stress-related injuries don't just affect our soldiers, they affect so many other areas in their lives. And I've got some more stats actually. It's 1 out of 3 women living with a veteran will go on to develop mental health related illnesses and are at high risk of getting medical diseases with medical difficulties in their futures. And for children, it's 1 out of 4 that will go on to develop social and emotional difficulties that will affect them for the rest of their lives. And they get this just for loving and living and supporting a soldier who's fought for his country and now has come back with post-traumatic stress-related injuries. A friend of mine, when I was going through my hard time, had 2 beautiful friends that got me through. Oh, sorry, there we are. And he told me this. He's no longer in the military for mental health reasons, but he found getting help made him mentally stronger, and it gave him the tools to take back his life. And for me, when I was going through one of the toughest experiences of my life, a good friend said to me, Meg, go and get some help. Go and get some treatment. You're going to be okay. And I am okay. I'm going great because I saw that help worked. And as a mental health clinician, I see this time and time again. I see families that reach out for help and they get it and they get through the mental illness and the injury that's causing so much damage at that time. Now, I want you to imagine something a little bit different. I want you to imagine that when a soldier starts experiencing post-traumatic stress injuries, insomnia or nightmares, they reach out for help, that there's no stigma to mental illness. The families get support. And instead of reaching for that bottle, they pick up a footy and they go outside and kick it with their kids. Or the thought of going to sleep at night time no longer terrifies you. You can actually roll over and hug that person that you love and close your eyes and sleep in peace. Imagine what would happen if our soldiers and our families saw that getting help was a sign of strength and that us as a community could support them. Just imagine what that could do. So if you didn't know this was happening, you certainly know it now. And at some stage in your life, you're going to meet someone that has been affected by war or affected by post-traumatic stress-related injury. And I want you to give them hope, give them support, give them a voice. Let them know that we're behind them. Don't let them fight this battle in silence anymore. Thank you.